بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. We will continue our study of the Hikma of Ibn Ata'illah radiallahu ta'ala anhu ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين آمين. And we've reached the 72nd aphorism. And just to remind ourselves of where we left off, the 71st aphorism reads, إنما جعل الدار الآخرة محلا لجزاء عباده المؤمنين لأن هذه الدار لا تصع ما يريد أن يعطيهم ولأنه أجل أقدارهم على أن يجازيهم في دار لا بقاء لها. And so this translates, He has only made the abode of the hereafter a place to reward His believing servants because this abode cannot encompass what He wishes to give them. That's deep. And because He has made their rank too high to reward them in an abode without permanence. Profound. And so you can see how these two are related. Number 72 states, من وجد ثمرة عمله عاجلا فهو دليل على وجود القبول آجلا. And so Victor Danner's translation is, whoever finds the fruit of his deeds coming quickly has proof of the existence of acceptance. Or you could say, experiencing the fruit of one's deeds in this world is a proof that one's deeds will be accepted in the hereafter. So let's look a little bit more closely in a few minutes at these words of this. Actually, let's start with that and then move on. So, man wajada. So literally, you would translate this as whoever finds. Wajada is to find. But you could also translate wajada as experience. Man wajada. So whoever finds or experiences, thamarata amalihi. A thamara is a fruit. And it could refer literally to a fruit that you pick from a tree and eat, or that the blessings of something, the good of something. So here that it is not the literal meaning, it's the connotation of the idea of benefit. The thamarata amalihi, we're going to talk about what the scholars interpret that as being. Your amal is your work, your deeds. So whoever finds or experiences the fruit of literally his deeds, ajilan. And so ajilan is juxtaposed to ajilan. You see this throughout these aphorisms. He juxtaposes one word to another, one concept to another. And so ajilan literally means immediately. And that ajilan, that literally means eventually. Or you could say ajilan in the short term, ajilan in the long term. But really what is meant here, ajilan, is in this world. Because this is something that we experience in a very short period of time while we're still here on earth. Whereas ajilan is that in the hereafter. So, man wajada thamarat amali ajilan. Whoever experiences the fruit of his deeds in this world, ajilan, immediately, he finds that it comes quick, one that tastes the sweetness of this here in this world. What does this mean? Fahuwa dalil. That experience of tasting the fruit of one's deeds is a dalil, it's a proof. A proof for what? Of the wujud of qabul, and he likes to add this word wujud consistently. You find this in a number of aphorisms. The existence of something. Wujud is existence. So the existence, and sometimes it doesn't always translate well in English, but this is what it means literally. Wujud al-qabul, the existence of acceptance. So acceptance is where Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gives you reward for any particular deed that you do. So you might do a bunch of deeds, but they now may not be accepted. You might do one good deed and Allah accepts it. and it's a means for eternal felicity. And ultimately, we never know if Allah accepts our deeds or not, accepts our life of worship, our life of belief or not. We never ever know. That's why we always have to remain between fear and hope. We fear that we're going to be rejected, and we hope that we're going to be accepted. And unfortunately, the vast majority of people are worried about their acceptance and rejection with people. But intelligent people get beyond all of that. And it doesn't mean that you don't interact with people in the world. Of course you do. But our acceptance and rejection and that hope and fear of it should be for something that is much, much, much loftier and greater than that. Ultimately, we want to be beloved to Allah and to be accepted by Allah and to be beloved to the best of creation and the prophets who came before us, and to that be beloved by the great companions of Rasulullah, the special members of his family, and all the great inheritors of the Prophet ﷺ, and the awliya and the ulama and the salihin throughout the centuries. Those are the people that in reality we should want to be close to, and that hope that we have acceptance in their presence. فهو دليل على وجود القبول آجلا. So if someone experiences the fruit of his deeds, it's a proof of acceptance. Ajilan, meaning in the hereafter. So you have ajilan, here in this world, immediately. Ajilan, eventually, in the future, in the hereafter. So this is extremely helpful, and you can summarize this as simply saying, this aphorism is about experiencing the fruit of one's deeds in this world as a sign of acceptance. So in other words, is that qabul is mughayyab, it's hidden to the eye. We never know if something's accepted or not, but there's signs of it being accepted. And interestingly enough, is that once someone becomes beloved to Allah, and Allah Ta'ala commands Gabriel to love that individual, and then Gabriel commands the angels in heaven to love that individual. How does that hadith end? فَيُولْضَعْ لَهُ الْقَبُولُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That person will be granted acceptance here in earth. In other words, is that from becoming beloved to Allah and being accepted in the divine presence, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make hearts inclined towards that individual. And it doesn't mean that the awliya are always loved by the people of their time, but the people of the hereafter that truly know, they are the ones that will incline towards those awliya because of the deep-seated affinity that they feel towards them. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of qabul, of acceptance. And we have this beautiful statement of Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, where he tells us that we should be more concerned with the qabul of our acts, the acceptance of our deeds, than we should be concerned with the actual performance of the deeds. So you have to be concerned to perform good deeds. That's what life's all about. But you should be even more concerned that those deeds are accepted. And he says, why? Because that never will any act be deemed to be something small or insignificant if it's accepted. Any act that is accepted is great. And this is where then that we have a Quranic proof for this. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Indeed, Allah only accepts from the muttaqeen, the people of taqwa, the people who are mindful of Him. This great description that we hear so much about in Allah's book, the people of taqwa. And so that if Allah accepts from someone, it's a sign that they are considered to be from the people of taqwa with Allah. And it's from here that we can understand one of the great Imams, Imam Al-Mihdar, from Sadatana Ali Ba'ali from the blessed city of Tarim. He said, were I to know that Allah accepted a single tasbihah, saying subhanallah one time, he said, I would invite the whole city of Tarim over, and I would have given them the best of food, which was bur and lahm, In other words, is that I would have given them that barley and meat, the very best meal that I could possibly provide for them. I would have made it for the entire city. And he said, then he quoted this verse, because if one instance of saying subhanallah is accepted, it's a sign that someone's considered to be from the muttaqeen. And this comes in the context of the two sons of Adam. One of them that had their sacrifice accepted and others wasn't. And there's a story that's involved with that. But this shows is that this is something that you and I should be concerned about. And then also that if we look in Surah Ali Imran, we see other instances of this, where this is something that the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask Allah for. They ask Allah for acceptance. And look at this very blessed story. This is the story of Maryam, Mary, the mother of the Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam. And her story and her special nature begins with her mother, and begins with the intention that her mother made when that she was expecting. And she had wanted a male child that would serve in the temple. And she wanted to dedicate her son to the service of the temple. And during that time is that females were not allowed in the temple. So what does Allah Ta'ala say about Hannah, the mother of Maryam? إِذْ قَالَتْ امْرَأَةُ عِمْرَانَ رَبِّ إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لَكَ مَا فِي بَطْنِي مُحَرَّرًا. Remember when the wife of Imran said, my Lord, I dedicate what is in my womb entirely to your service. And what does she say? فَتَقَبَّلْ مِنِّي إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. So accept from me, you truly are the all-hearing, the all-knowing. So she wanted to devote the child that was in her womb. And this teaches us is that if we're blessed with children, to get married and to have children, you should think about children from the time that you choose your partner, from the time that one does the act that with their spouse, and make intentions in doing so, to be blessed with pious children. These are one of the three things that remain a pious child that supplicates for you. And we should make that intention and to fulfill all of the various Sharia etiquettes that are associated with that. But then that once that our spouse is now expecting, one of the greatest intentions that you can make is the intention of that Hannah, is to devote your child to the deen completely. Give your child to the deen. And that's what muharraran means here. Completely devoted to service. And here, this is a nadar. A vow is the strongest thing of all. It's one thing to make an intention, but a vow is something even stronger. A vow is even stronger. And the fuqaha, the scholars, the jurists, and the different schools have different positions on this, but a vow is serious. You can't get out of a vow once you make it. You have to do that thing. Whereas if someone just swears an oath by Allah, it's easier to expiate. And then we learn about the story here. And from the blessing of her intention and her asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept what it is that she vowed, Allah Ta'ala eventually says in verse 37, فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ. And that so her Lord accepted her graciously, وَأَنْبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا, and blessed her with a good upbringing. So here is that she made the dua for acceptance, and then Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا, Allah accepted it. And when this shows you what happens when Allah Ta'ala accepts something from you, the traces are seen here in this world. And so in the incredible story of Sayyidatina Maryam, and that she was one of the 4 perfect women, and she was the mother of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, and we ascribed to her the immaculate birth, and she was a siddiqah, wa ummuhu siddiqah, and we love her, and that she is a model for our female folk. And just as she's in specific things that relate to women, just as she is a model for all of humanity, men and women alike, with many of her other great traits. And so this is a story of asking for acceptance and then receiving acceptance. And then also we have another that mentioning of this verb of taqabbala in Surah Al-Ahqaf, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He says, is that وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي إِنِّي تُبْتُ إِلَيْكَ وَإِنِّي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And instill righteousness in my offspring. I truly repent to you and I truly submit to your will. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ تَقَبَّلُوا عَنْهُمْ أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا. It is from these people that we will accept the good that they did. وَنَتَجَاوَزْ عَنْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ, and overlook their misdeeds. And so there's certain traits of people that Allah Ta'ala accepts from. These are the people that we want to be like. The people of sincerity, the people of taqwa. These are the people that we want to resemble, so that Allah Ta'ala will accept from us. So if we look a little bit more closely about the specific meanings here. In the previous aphorism, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about the greatness of what He wants to give His believing servants, and how it is so great that He doesn't fully give it to them here in this world because this abode cannot encompass what He wants to give them, and that their rank is too high for this, and the nature of this world, because it lacks permanence, is not befitting for them to receive it here. But then when we tie this into that, what it is that we need to do to prepare ourselves for those great gifts, is that all of the acts that we do in order to receive the reward of those acts, it is predicated upon their being accepted by Allah. And so not every act that anyone does is accepted. And this is why scholars would oftentimes speak about these traits in succession. There has to be ilm, there has to be knowledge. Ignorance is akin to non-existence. There's no way to do any act of goodness without knowledge. You have to have knowledge. But knowledge is not enough. You could know that you need to pray your 5 daily prayers, but then not do it. So you have to have knowledge. And then you actually have to, secondly, put your knowledge into practice. So it's a second step. And then that's not enough, because you could have knowledge and put your knowledge into practice, but you don't make the right intention. You're not sincere. You show off. You're doing it hypocritically. So you have to have knowledge, and you have to put your knowledge into practice, and you have to be sincere in seeking your knowledge and putting that knowledge into practice. So sincerity is the third step. But it's a prerequisite for the acceptance of that act that you've done that's only based upon knowledge. And then, just when you think that you're fine, there's oftentimes 2 other steps that they mention. Is that the fourth is what they call wara, scrupulousness, where it's not just enough to know and to put your knowledge into practice sincerely, is that you have to have a carefulness, a scrupulousness to you, and sift very carefully between your options to make sure that you do the best of them. That's the closest to receiving the good pleasure of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then there's a 5th trait that they speak about. After you do all of that, is that still there's an element of fear, because you don't know still if that act's going to be accepted. So knowledge, action, sincerity, scrupulousness, and fear. So what Ibn Ata'illah wants to tell us here is that there is signs for the acceptance of our acts, indicators whereby which we can know that if we are on the right track and doing the right thing. And one of them is that we start to experience, we find the thamara of our amal, the fruit of our actions. And so what then is the thamara of this amal? What is the fruit of our action? There is a basic level that is fairly easy to understand, and then it actually gets very deep. And so the first degree, the first aspect of the fruit of this work, of finding the fruits, that experiencing the fruit of our deeds, is that worship becomes sweet. Worship becomes sweet. At first, you have to work hard. At first, that your nafs opposes you. Your ego doesn't want to do what you know that it needs to do. But then you condition it. You struggle with yourself. And let's just take dhikr, for instance. If someone would sit right now and tell you for the next hour, 60 minutes, you can't do anything, put your phone away, don't look at anything, close your eyes and make dhikr for the next hour. If we haven't conditioned our souls just going to be, all of a sudden we're going to be hot when we weren't hot before. All of a sudden we'll be hungry when we weren't hungry before. All of a sudden we're going to be uncomfortable when we weren't uncomfortable before. And we just maybe want to start and this is the nature of the nafs. It doesn't like to be told what to do. And as soon as you tell it, and this is why praying a fard prayer is so much harder than praying a sunnah prayer. If you have qada, prayers that you have to make up, and you want to pray 4 rakats of sunnah prayers or 4 rakats of fard, it's 4 rakats. But why is it so heavy, the fard? One of the wisdoms is because you're being told what to do. And the nafs wants to do what it wants to do. It doesn't like to be told what to do. And so when we condition ourselves to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it then will eventually become sweet. And this is one of the great things that we have to strive to do. And especially for the full-time students, it applies to everybody. Every Muslim has to have a structure to their life. But especially someone that Allah Ta'ala has given the great blessing of being freed up to study full-time. This is the opportunity to do this. Your classes the first few weeks are difficult. And then you start to taste the sweetness of knowledge eventually, and then that you can't let go after that. Is that praying 5 daily prayers in congregation, not missing the takbir al-ihram, and doing everything you need to do in order to do that at first is difficult. But then you condition yourself, and then if you miss the takbir al-ihram, you feel like you missed something great, which you did. And so forth and so on with all other acts of obedience. And having a time in your life where you put yourself through tarbiyah, you put yourself through a program that is like a spiritual boot camp with no the military implications. It's a spiritual boot camp of spiritual struggle. It's one of the greatest possible things that you can do in your life. And as I said, لولا المربي ما عرفت ربي. Where it would not be for someone that nurtured my soul, I would never have known my Lord. And nothing is more important for the ummah of our Prophet ﷺ and humanity than for people to learn how to check their egos and to purify their hearts. This is precisely why there's so much fasad and corruption and wrong and harming other people and killing. It's because of the unbridled nafs and ego. And so our job is to train ourselves so that we can find the thamar of our amal. And one of the greatest of those fruits is that it becomes sweet. You start to taste the sweetness, where you start to enjoy prayer. Taraweeh might be long, but you start to enjoy it. You start to enjoy dhikr. You start to enjoy fasting, and so forth and so on. And there's other meanings as well to the thamar of our amal, the fruit of our actions. And these are the meanings of that you actually have energy when you perform these acts of goodness, as opposed to it being difficult and finding yourself lazy. And that in addition to that, it's facilitated for you to be consistent. And the more and more that you persevere in those various acts, the greater the doors that open up for you to benefit from them. As Allah says, وَيُزِيدُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا هُدًى. And Allah increases those that have been guided in guidance. And door after door, door after door, door after door continues to open up. And this is why some of them have said in reference to the words of Allah in Surah Ar-Rahman, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. And for the one who fears the maqam, the station of his Lord, or the standing before his Lord, jannatan, 2 paradises. One of the meanings is that there's the paradise of the hereafter. And the second meaning is the paradisical state that Allah Ta'ala blesses His people here in this world that obey Him, from finding the sweetness of worship and the pleasure of being in a state of intimate conversation with Allah, and that finding that great intimacy and that what Allah Ta'ala brings to the heart of the righteous. And there's degrees of that, of course. And a reference to this is when our Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَجُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ. The coolness of my eyes was placed in prayer. And the idea here of qurrat ayn of something is that the Arab spoke about hot tears and cold tears. That tears of sadness were always considered to be hot tears.